My name is Kate, and I'm 40 years old. I've been married to my husband Mason for 10 years. We're the same age, having met and worked together in the same department before we were assigned to different branches. Mason is known for his responsibility and is well regarded by his subordinates. Although he's somewhat vain and dislikes showing any weakness, his confidence and masculine charm made him stand out. His excellent work performance had his superiors expecting him to be promoted without any issues. In contrast, I'm more reserved and tend to keep a low profile. I was quite surprised when Mason, with his outgoing nature, pursued me so passionately, given our contrasting personalities. After 2 years of dating, he proposed with a grand bouquet of roses. It was the first time I felt so cherished, and I eagerly accepted. Our initial excitement, however, was overshadowed by an unexpected challenge: living with my in-laws. There had been no prior discussion about this arrangement, and I was reluctant, but Mason insisted. He reassured me, saying that my parents would be pleased and that they were looking forward to having me with them. Their enthusiasm made it hard for me to refuse. So, for the past decade, we've lived in his parents' home. Reality of this arrangement was far from what I had imagined. Every morning I faced my mother-in-law's relentless criticism. "Kate, you've forgotten to clean the entrance again," she would say right after I finished preparing breakfast. This daily routine of reprimands became a norm. "I'm sorry," I would respond, but it was never enough. "Just apologizing isn't sufficient. If you understand, go and do it right away," she'd reply. Despite having a job, I was treated like a servant from dawn till dusk. I had to wake up at 5 a.m. to prepare breakfast and clean. My mother-in-law, a housewife herself, never took on these tasks. I would rush through my chores, head to work, come home and start dinner immediately. By bedtime, I was so exhausted I could barely stay awake. This relentless routine took a toll on my health, leaving me weak and frequently unwell, likely due to stress. My mother-in-law would often complain about the cleaning, saying, "Do it properly. I don't want the neighbors thinking we're neglecting it." Meanwhile, she would relax in the living room, enjoying the breakfast I had made. "If you don't finish quickly, you'll be late for work," she'd add, never missing a chance to remind me of her expectations. Throughout this ordeal, Mason never stood up for me. My father-in-law would bury himself in his newspaper, pretending not to see. The mistreatment I faced in this home, compounded by the stress, caused my weight to drop drastically, and my health deteriorated. I lost my period due to the weight loss, making it impossible for me to get pregnant. Despite these hardships, my mother-in-law continued to place the blame on me. Before getting married, I had no idea how challenging our life together would become. I used to care deeply about my appearance and health, but those days seem like a distant memory now. The stress from the mistreatment and the shock of seeing my reflection in the mirror have left me feeling despondent. I've become entirely submissive to my mother-in-law, losing all motivation and struggling to leave the house. During this bleak period, I received devastating news. My father had died in a sudden accident. Hadn't visited my parents' home in a long time because my mother-in-law and husband would criticize me whenever I wanted to go. I deeply regret not making the effort to visit more often, especially now that my father was gone. My parents' home is only about an hour's drive from my in-laws' house, so it's not too far. I asked my husband and mother-in-law if they would come to the funeral. "The funeral is happening, so we won't be going." They cut me off before I could finish. "Just have your family there," they said coldly. I was stunned by their lack of empathy. Trying to keep my composure despite the anger and sadness, I simply replied, "I understand." The funeral was well attended, a testament to how much my father was loved. He had many connections through his work, and the outpouring of grief from those who came was overwhelming. When I saw my mother, who I hadn't seen in a long time, she was shocked by my gaunt appearance. "Kate, you've lost so much weight." "What happened?" she asked, her concern palpable. "Oh, it's nothing," I replied, trying to downplay it. Are you sick? I can't bear to lose you too, my mother said, tears streaming down her face as she thought I might be ill. I'm not sick, Mom. I'm fine, I assured her. Please don't worry. I managed to calm my mother down, and we took a break in the waiting room. If you're not sick, then what's going on? She asked, her concern still evident. As I recalled my interactions with my mother-in-law and husband, anger bubbled up inside me. Even when they learned of my father's passing, they offered no words of comfort. I decided it was time to share the truth with my mother. Actually, I've been dealing with what might be called bride bullying, I confessed, my gaze dropping as I spoke. I'm just so exhausted. My mother's expression turned even more worried. I'm relieved you're not ill, but I can't rest easy knowing this is why you haven't been visiting more often. I nodded in response. My mother then handed me a piece of paper. Read this and think carefully about what you want to do next, she said. The paper was my father's will, meticulously prepared in case something happened. It detailed the inheritance I was to receive, which amounted to $790,000. That's the inheritance you're entitled to, my mother explained. You can decide how to use it. I was taken aback by the substantial amount, but a glimmer of hope began to emerge. With this inheritance, I could finally move out of my in-laws' home and start anew. The prospect of building a new house and leaving behind the oppressive environment filled me with renewed optimism. Returning to my in-laws' house, I went about my usual housework. On days when I had plans, the mess seemed to multiply as there was no one else to help clean. As I silently worked, my thoughts kept drifting back to the $790,000 inheritance and the potential it held for a fresh start. Despite my deep resentment toward my mother-in-law, I still wanted to be with my husband. I decided it was time to be honest about the inheritance and propose that we move out of my in-laws' home. One thing I need to talk to you about, I began after my in-laws had gone to bed and we were alone. It's about my dad. It turns out I'm going to inherit his estate. Oh, really? Mason asked, intrigued. How much? $790,000, I replied. His reaction was one of sheer disbelief, his eyes widening as he processed the figure. What, are you serious? He asked, clearly taken aback. Yes, $790,000, I confirmed. When Mason fully grasped the amount, he seemed thrilled. Wow, he left that much for you. That's incredibly generous. Seeing him in such a positive mood, I decided it was the right time to discuss my proposal. So, about what to do with the money. But before I could finish, he interrupted with something utterly shocking. We need to transfer that money to my mom's bank account right away. I was stunned, unable to process his words. It sounded so absurd I initially thought he was joking. Wait, why? I inherited it, so that doesn't seem right, I said with a laugh, trying to make sense of his request. Mason's face grew serious, and he slammed his hand on the table. What kind of nonsense are you talking about? A wife's money belongs to her mother-in-law. His words were so outlandish that I wondered if he even realized how ridiculous he sounded. As I looked into his serious eyes, fear began to creep in. I'm sorry, I said, feeling a chill. I don't quite understand what you're saying, I said, feeling overwhelmed. All I wanted was to discuss the possibility of building a house for us. Instead, Mason was trying to claim my inheritance as his mother's property. That night, I was so shocked I couldn't sleep. The next morning, as I prepared breakfast, Mason and my mother-in-law confronted me with angry expressions. So, Kate, my mother-in-law began, I heard you inherited $790,000, but said you wouldn't give it to me. What are you thinking? Clearly, Mason had already informed her about the inheritance. It's my inheritance, I said. I don't see why it should go to you. Stop arguing and transfer the money to my mom's account right now, Mason demanded. A wife's money is family money, right? It was evident they were determined to seize the inheritance by any means. No matter how much I resisted, they only blamed me. Realizing that further resistance was futile, I fell silent. Mason then handed me a piece of paper. You're getting carried away just because you've come into some money. What's with the attitude? I'm the one supporting you. If you don't change your mind, it's divorce. The paper was a divorce form, and Mason had already filled out his part. Take this and go back to your parents' house. If you apologize properly, I might reconsider the divorce, he added coldly. Holding the completed divorce form, I felt a wave of memories wash over me. I had never been supported in this house. I contributed equally to living expenses and handled all the housework, yet I was always looked down upon. In the end, they even tried to take my father's money. If I stayed, I might give in to their demands and hand over the inheritance. But this money was a gift from my father, and it felt like an opportunity to assert control over my future. With the filled-out divorce form in hand, I realized I now had the power to make decisions for myself and decide what was next. I resolved firmly in my heart that I would never give up my father's inheritance and made a decisive plan. That evening, after work, I returned to my parents' house. "I'm home," I called out as I entered. "Welcome back, sweetie," my mother greeted me with a warm smile. "I had a feeling you'd be coming home soon." Her gentle demeanor and the comforting aroma of home-cooked dishes greeted me. I felt utterly worn out from everything I'd been through. As I took a bite of the warm meal, tears welled up in my eyes, moved by the simple, genuine comfort of it. "Did you tell Mason about the inheritance?" my mother asked. "Yes, and that's when things got complicated," I replied, sharing everything that had transpired with my husband and mother-in-law. My mother was visibly shocked by their reaction. "The inheritance is yours, and it's up to you to decide how you want to live your life from now on," she said, gently wrapping her arm around my shoulders as tears continued to stream down my face. After spending a week at my mother's house, I felt ready to face the situation head-on. "Well, I'm going now," I said as I prepared to leave. "Take care," my mother replied, her concern evident. I was no longer afraid to return to my in-laws' house. With a renewed mindset, I headed back, determined to stand my ground. Finally back, my husband and mother-in-law greeted me, arms crossed. "Have you reflected on your actions?" "Yes, I'm sorry," I said, my voice steady. "Please let me stay in this house." I offered an apology that felt hollow and insincere. My mother-in-law's smirk widened as she responded, "Then hurry up and hand over the inheritance." "Actually, the inheritance procedures are taking longer than expected," I said. "It's still not finalized. It's a complicated process, and it will probably take another 6 months or more." "It takes that long?" she asked, seemingly indifferent. "Well, that's fine," she replied, as if satisfied that I would eventually comply. They seemed content, believing I would obediently hand over the inheritance when the time came. Meanwhile, they continued to berate me about the state of their home after my week away. "The house is a mess because you didn't fulfill your duties as a wife. Clean it up quickly," they demanded. The house was indeed in disarray after just a week, and it was surprisingly filthy. It was almost impressive how quickly it had deteriorated. I used to be devastated by such conditions, but now things had changed. I no longer cared about enduring my mother-in-law's bullying or being pressured into exhausting housework. I completed the housework as instructed by my mother-in-law. 10 months later, it was her birthday. "Well, we're heading out now," she said with a hint of satisfaction. "Make sure the house stays clean while we're gone." As usual, she was going on a trip for her birthday, and of course, she never invited me. "By the way, have you received the inheritance yet?" she asked. "It's supposed to arrive today," I replied. "Well, that's perfect. That $790,000 is a present for my mom. Make sure to transfer it to her account before we get back." I knew the inheritance wouldn't conveniently arrive on her birthday, and my husband could see through my lie. I didn't respond, only smiled and said, "Take care and have a safe trip." Once they were out of sight, I began putting my plan into action. I had been waiting for this day for a long time. They would surely be surprised when they returned, but it was no longer my concern. I quickly packed my belongings and left my in-laws' house. This is amazing, I thought as I moved into my new home. I had used my father's inheritance to build a beautiful house, and I was thrilled to be living here. I had invited my mother to live with me, and I was genuinely happy to be free from the constant meddling and demands of my in-laws. I sank into the soft sofa, feeling a deep sense of contentment. Today was a celebration of our new home. With my mother, we had hired a chef and enjoyed a luxurious day together. The next evening, my phone rang. It was my husband. "Hey, what's going on?" he asked, confusion evident in his voice. He was puzzled as to why all my belongings were gone when they returned home. "I won't be coming back, so goodbye," I said firmly. I tried to hang up, not wanting to engage further, but my mother-in-law's furious voice blared through the phone. "What the hell do you think you're doing? Where are you now?" "I can't tell you that," I replied, trying to stay calm. "You told me to clean the house, so I packed up my things." "This isn't funny." "And you still haven't transferred the inheritance," she continued, her voice rising. "How many times do I have to say that a daughter-in-law's money is mine?" "I'm single now," I said, deliberately cold. "I'm divorced, remember?" There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. I could almost picture her speechless, her anger momentarily silenced. "Well, I'm actually divorced," I continued. "I've submitted the divorce papers Mason gave me. We're strangers now. Goodbye." With that, I hung up the phone. The thought of my mother-in-law's shocked reaction made me burst into laughter. I felt a tremendous weight lift off my shoulders now that I was completely free from their influence. In the following days, my ex-husband called me repeatedly. Whenever I had the chance, I would answer the phone just to let his abusive comments wash over me. I recorded every call from start to finish. I decided to take the recordings to the police. Harassment from an ex-spouse isn't uncommon, and they would issue a warning before things got worse. Fortunately, the police acted swiftly and went to my former in-law's house to issue a warning. For my image-conscious ex-in-laws, having the police show up was a significant blow. To make matters worse, one of my ex-husband's subordinates, who lived nearby, witnessed the police visit. Given my ex's prominence at his company, the news spread quickly, and his discontented colleagues began embellishing the story, spreading negative rumors about him. Eventually, the gossip reached my own department. "I heard the police came," someone mentioned casually. "Yeah, I'm divorced now," I said, raising my voice slightly so the gossip-loving employees could hear. The bullying from my mother-in-law and my ex's abusive words were just too much. The story quickly spread, reaching even my ex-husband's boss, who later confronted him about the growing number of bad rumors circulating. "What's this I hear about you?" his boss asked, clearly aware of the situation. "Have no patience for men who can't cherish their wives." Given the damaging rumors swirling around, our reputation had taken a hit, so I decided it was time for a major change. The transfer order I arranged for my ex-husband was severe. It sent him to a branch office notorious for its poor performance. The area was so isolated it was almost like a landlocked island, completely devoid of entertainment or amenities. The message was clear. The transfer meant the end of any future opportunities for advancement. Everything he had worked for would now be in ruins. He had no choice but to accept the transfer and relocate to the remote countryside. As for my ex-mother-in-law, she was devastated by the collapse of her son's reputation and the upheaval of their lives. She withdrew from society completely and eventually fell into a deep depression. Her condition deteriorated further, showing signs of dementia and causing disturbances at home. My ex-father-in-law did his best to care for his ailing wife, even though she was no longer related to me. It was a testament to the enduring bonds of family, despite the circumstances. The consequences of their ongoing harassment had come full circle, and I felt a sense of justice seeing them face the repercussions. Now my mother and I are thriving in our new home. We've even taken up gardening in our spacious yard, a hobby that has brought a new joy to our lives. I never would have discovered such a fulfilling pastime if I had still been living under that oppressive roof. My health, once compromised by stress, has improved remarkably, and I feel truly happy and liberated from my ex-in-laws.